Hi everyone, Anthony Ottano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Yo La Tengo record, This Stupid World. This is the 17th full-length studio LP, 17th? Man, album from underground rock legends, Yo La Tengo. One of the most consistent bands on the indie circuit ever, who have been defining the more noise and shoegaze-centric sides of indie rock since the 80s and 90s. They have stuck to that sound pretty closely throughout the entirety of their career, occasionally hitting points in their latter years of versatility, such as on the album Popular Songs, or the very mild but dreamy aesthetics of Faye that came several years later. There's also the folk-centric stuff like that dropped in the middle of the 2010s. Truth be told, there hasn't been a lot of records in this most current chapter of the band's career that I have found to be gripping, but I was excited to give this new one here a shot given a lot of the passionate discussion I've heard around it. So I went into this record with my fingers crossed and hoping for great things, kicked it off with Sinatra Drive Breakdown, whose first leg I thought was pretty impressive. Very Velvet Underground type of feel on this track with the minimal percussion, the driving bass, which creates this enchanting and hypnotic groove on top of which the guitars just create absolute mayhem. Very psychedelic, very noisy, just dripping chaos all over everything. And look, for sure it's a vibe, at least for the first couple of minutes of the track, but as I sit in this bath that progressively grows colder and colder, I start to realize that the tune isn't really all that great. The sound of it overall isn't as immersive as I think it would like to be, and finally, the guitar work isn't really all that engaging either. I know that it's not trying to impress in kind of a flashy and technical way, but it's not really bold or out there enough to create any thrills either. With the following track, Fallout, again, it's pretty nice to hear the band adhering so closely to their stylistic roots on this one, with a haunting tune, driving guitar riffs, but the mix on this one is so washed out, the guitar tones just come across supremely bland. Even though some of the melodies are there and the performance is tight, the sound of it leaves a lot to be desired. I feel roughly the same way about the track Apology Letter too, but on top of it, this one features some really unflattering lyricism and an awkward vocal delivery as well. I guess what's a little disheartening about these tracks is that younger bands have built on the sound that Yo La Tengo is delivering here, creatively and colorfully. So why can't this record level up a little bit too, aesthetically? Why does it need to be spinning its wheels in the mud? Next, we have the track Tonight's Episode, which in my opinion is a little more like it. We have some unsettling feedback, some tense drums in the mix too, a kind of tongue-in-cheek bass line that sounds like it was lifted from a very peppy rock and roll tune, and Ira Kaplan's vocals here come across so cold-blooded and eerie. It's like if Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers brought a goth twist to their typically goofy rock and roll songs, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. There's also ASELESTINE, which is a dreamy acoustic cut led by Georgia Hubley, which is as gentle as it is pretty. One of the few tracks on this thing that tries to be immersive, tries to create a sense of place in sound, a stillness of sound, and I actually want to just kind of swim in it. While the tune and progression of it is nice, I'm not so concerned about it because I just want to sleep in this track forever. By contrast, Until It Happens is another acoustic song, but this time much more tense, much more percussive. The surreal lyricism is pretty intriguing as well, but Ira's weary vocal delivery on this one, I think undercuts the song's very stony and ominous vibe, even lessens the impact of lyrics like Prepare to Die. Brain Capers is one of the more fiery cuts on the record, texturally speaking anyway. Between the ringing synths, guitar distortion, as well as a very raspy upfront vocals in the mix, the whole sound of this thing is just searing, relatively. I suppose there's a fitting title attached to it as well, as the whole track sounds like a very chaotic internal monologue. However, it does fail to develop once it plateaus at the midpoint, and again just fails to do anything that keeps the rest of the track edge of your seat, I suppose. However, it does fail to develop past this plateau point around the middle of the track, leaving the song feeling kind of one-dimensional. As far as the final leg on this record goes, it is left off with two very long closing tracks. We have the droney title cut for one, which I'm not opposed to in theory, but the strange middle-of-the-road guitar drone that really sops up most of the mix, well, it kind of destroys any chance of this song presenting any other sounds in kind of a spotlight position that might bring some, I don't know, versatility, some extra color. Once more, it's a track on the record that is attempting to deliver something immersive, but it's just not really a sound I want to be immersed in. Then the closer is a pretty pleasant piece of ambient pop, which is a much sweeter listen by comparison, especially with George's vocals at the forefront. We have a very watery, effect-soaked mix, meditative beat, ghostly drones. It's not anything mind-blowing, but it's at least pretty and serene while it's on. Certainly seductive and relaxing in its own way, but still not really a moment that's saving the record for me personally. And in my opinion, this was a record that needed saving. Sure, there are some cuts here where it feels like Yo La Tengo is kind of going back to basics, and that's all well and good, but the toothless guitar tones, the lack of compelling songs, and the lack of song structures that bring any kind of significant development, yeah, all that kind of kneecapped this album's full potential, in my opinion. I'm feeling a light to decent 5 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well over here next to my head. It's another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Yo La Tengo, forever.